Bishop Rick Thomas, excited to be with you today. I want to go over a little subject in the Bible that we're seeing a lot of response on the Facebook these days, and a lot of people have been writing about this particular subject. And it's talk about a concept of sowing and reaping, about giving in order to receive. It's a funny word because people say to me all the time, I don't give to receive. I would never go to God and give expecting God to give something back to me. And really, I think if that's the purpose, the reason you're going is I'm going to give, so I'm going to force God into giving me something. Yeah, it's a wrong attitude. It's a wrong spirit. It's a wrong mindset. It's not biblical. But to give and not have any anticipation also is not right. It's the wrong concept and it's not biblical. So I want to look at a couple of things with you today. I just want to share a couple of thoughts that I hopefully will inspire you, cause you to begin to think differently. And, we go into the book of Malachi in chapter 3, and we find God is talking to the church here. He's speaking to the prophet. He's talking, and he says, I've got something against you, and what I have against you is that you've robbed me in tithe and offering. Now, it's kind of unique because it's tithe and offering. Important we look at that from that perspective. He said, you've robbed me in tithe and also offering. And as we look at that, we see that God said, but if you will return to me, I will return back to you. In other words, if you'll come to me with the tithe and the offering, I'll come back to you. Why? The tithe is holy unto the Lord according to the Scriptures. And I've had a lot of people come to me and they go, well, tithing is the Old Covenant, it's Old Testament. And besides that, in the New Testament, we have Jesus and we're under grace. And because of grace, tithing is an obligation. It's kind of like a law. Well, tithing was never under the law. That's the first thing where they get things mixed up. Tithing is something that was instituted by God in the garden with man, and then instituted along with Abraham. And Abraham began to put things into perspective. And then when Moses came along and we began to see things come to pass, God had them incorporate into the law. But we know that Jesus, according to the book of Hebrews, is a priest, a high order priest after the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek in the Old Testament was a high priest of the Most High God that received the tithe. He received the tithe. That was what he did. If Jesus is after that order, and you can't get any more New Testament than Jesus, then we understand that tithe is something that is very important to God. In fact, he says the tithe is holy unto me. He says, don't take that away from me, which is holy unto me. So when we talk about tithing, it's important we begin to get some things right in our spirit about what is it about. Tithing should not be a chore. It should not be something that we struggle with. It's something that really, as a believer, is something that I would want to do. Because when I bring my tithe into the storehouse to God, what I'm doing with that is I know that God is a God of purpose, design, and structure. So purpose, design, and structure means when I bring the tithe, what is the purpose of the tithe? When I bring the tithe in the storehouse, I just wrote this down. It demonstrates my faith that God is the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. He's the source and being of my life. Tithing is a declaration of my faith to God. It's letting him know that I don't trust anyone or anything above you. You are my ultimate source. If it wasn't for you, I couldn't be here. The tithe is holy unto you. I'm honoring you with that which you have declared is holy unto you. Now, that's important we see that. We go a little bit step further and we understand he talks about offering. What is an offering? An offering, what is the purpose of an offering? An offering demonstrates value. You don't give offerings to something that does not have value. With an offering, I can create value in a person's life. I can create value in a certain situation. In other words, I can take a ministry and I can give an offering to a ministry, and it demonstrates the value of that ministry, that it's going to be fruitful, it's going to produce, it's going to do some things here. So the offering is really important that we understand that the offering is about creating value in others, creating value outside of our system. That's what an offering is all about. And then we go to the other side of giving, which talks about the fact of sowing and reaping. The Bible says as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest. What am I sowing? Why am I sowing it? What's the purpose of it? The purpose of sowing is to produce a harvest. Make no mistake about it. Book of Genesis, everything produces after its own kind. Without the sowing of a seed, you're not going to have a harvest. Without the sowing of a seed, you're not going to have the beginning of a life. Without the giving of your time, your talent, your energy, your finance, and without using yourself to begin to sow seed into others, into others' lives, without sowing seed, I cannot anticipate a harvest to come back into my life. No farmer walks out to an empty field and says, boy, I sure hope I have a harvest this year. And he comes back at harvest time and wants to harvest when he's never sown a seed. And that's where a lot of people are today. Number one, they've robbed God of the tithe. They have honored him. They've dishonored him by not celebrating who he is, showing their faith in God as the Most High God. Number two, they've held back on their offerings. When God speaks to your heart and tells you to give to someone, he's telling you, listen, show value to this thing. Show value to that individual. Show value to that ministry. Be sure and understand that when you're giving an offering, you're creating value. And then, of course, when you're sowing a seed, know this: God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. In other words, our sowing is connected to reaping. Important we get that in our spirit. If I'm going to sow, I have to anticipate a harvest. If I'm going to give, I have to anticipate it to be given back, pressed down, shaken together, running over in good measure. If I'm going to show time, I got to believe God's going to help me redeem the time. If I'm going to give of myself to someone, I believe God's going to give favor with me, so others will give themselves to me when I need it. Everything produces after its own kind. What you make happen for others, God makes happen for you. And then the last area of talking about giving is an area of almsgiving, giving to the poor. Now that's important because when we give alms, the purpose of giving alms is to help those who can't help themselves. It also is a demonstration of our love and our compassion for others. Our love and our compassion by reaching out to those who can't help themselves. Almsgiving is very important. God says, give to the poor and I will give back to you. You cannot give something that God is not going to honor when you're helping those who can't help themselves. Give to the poor. And God said, I'll give back to you. So when we look at this, we understand that the tithe demonstrates our faith in God. That the offering, it demonstrates our love for others. That when we sow a seed, it's because we're believing God to bring a harvest back into our life. And last but not least, when we give to those who can't help themselves, we are now demonstrating our compassion for others in the world in which we live. God said, return to me and I'll return unto you. How do I return to God? Through my tithe and through my offering. I make sure that my tithe is going to reveal who my God is. My offering's going to reveal the blessing and the favor of others and the value of others. My seed time and harvest is going to reveal what I'm believing for God to bring into my life. And my giving to the poor is going to demonstrate my love and my compassion. When we get these things right in our lives, then we can now declare the verse in John 10:10. Where the thief cometh not before to steal, kill, and destroy. That's the false prophet. He's come to steal and kill from the people. But those who understand who Jesus is and knows the shepherd's voice, when they operate in tithe and offering, it says now they will have life and they will have it more abundantly. Bishop Rick Thomas declaring unto you, may the life of Christ be abundant in yours.